Podcasts on UNC-TV.org are made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV.
Here, in the quiet pine woods south and east of downtown Wilmington, a battle was fought nearly 150 years ago. A battle that turned the tide of the Civil War in favor of the Union. Fort Fisher had fallen after a huge sustained bombardment from the sea. The fort guarded access to Wilmington to the north, the last Confederate city open to trade. Eventually, defenders south and west of Wilmington were forced to retreat and chose to make their last stand here at Forks Road. Although outnumbered 3-1, the Confederates nearly wiped out the first assault by Union troops, but they could not hold and had to abandon Wilmington. Obscured in the smoke of battle and largely lost to the times was an astonishing fact. The wave of Union troops who first assaulted the Confederate earthworks, the troops who had done most of the fighting on the east side of the river, were colored soldiers.
There were more than 179,000 African Americans who fought for the United States military. Here there were 2 brigades of United States colored troops comprising about 3,300 men. One brigade was principally the combatant unit here, 1st, 5th, 10th, 27th, and 37th U.S. colored troops, and about 50 of them were casualties here.
The Battle of Forks Road was small as Civil War combat went, despite its significance, and it was little noted as the war came to a close. In time, Wilmington got back to business and grew into the city that it is today, while the battlefield slumbered beneath the pines.
I got very interested in the site. We were able, through archaeological surveys, prove that there was indeed a battle here, but there was not much known about the battle through documentation. And so I started turning over every stone that I could find, looking in the official records, newspaper articles, regimental histories, and didn't find much, but I found enough to prove that indeed this is where the Confederates made their last stand. And that the principal Union combatants were United States colored troops.
United States colored troops fought in 39 major battles, and they fought in over 400 minor skirmishes and other smaller battles. But this particular one here in Forks Road is important because the majority of the federal troops were USCTs. Coming up from Fort Fisher, this was the next stop before the fall of Wilmington. And Wilmington, of course, was a major asset to the Confederacy in keeping their supply line open. So but the fact that the USCT were victorious here at Forks Road is a very important part of our history.
And I must honestly say that within the black community, the stigma of the Civil War still runs deep. It still runs deep. I've been a reenactor for over 10 years. And a friend of mine came to me some years ago and said they had a traveling Underground Railroad show and they needed some blacks to portray slaves. And I told him, I said, I'm not portraying slaves this week. I'm not doing slaves, just honestly. And after I hung up and I thought about it, and I said, I could be a soldier, but I couldn't be a slave.
Every February, the patch of Wilmington woods that was the battlefield is transformed into a Civil War encampment with all the accoutrements one would expect of the era, Confederate and Union.
This is my tent here, and I have all the equipment that goes along with it. Every person has their own equipment, and we come out and we just have a good time.
Fred Johnson is tightly woven into the fabric of Forks Road.
He is so active in the historical community around Wilmington. and has done so much to not only investigate but further interest in the role of African Americans during the Civil War. He is an active participant in Civil War reenactment, serving on an artillery crew, but he goes around to local schools and portrays an African American soldier dressing out in uniform, even going so far as to make hardtack, which was kind of a staple among Civil War soldiers for eating, like a hard biscuit. And encouraging students, black and white, to take a greater interest in their past.
So have a good trip. I hope you learned something.
Thank you.
All right. So anyhow, I asked this one young girl in this class, I said, how would you like to have eaten hardtack all the time? She says, I wouldn't. I said, what would you have did? I'd go to Burger King.
Fred is full of stories, like the one about how the shoes Civil War soldiers wore didn't come in lefts and rights.
Reason being, they only had to make one shoe. They didn't have to make a left or a right. If I would get shot, fall dead, you come by and see my shoe was better than yours, your left shoe or right shoe, you'd put my shoe on and wear it.
For Sergeant Johnson, Battery B, 2nd Regiment United States Colored Troops, and a 79-year-old veteran of the Korean War, Forks Road and the Civil War run deep in his blood. Fred's roots are in Pennsylvania, and 2 of his ancestors fought with the USCTS.
I learned that my great-great-grandfather, Peter Quamine, he was with the 3rd U.S. Infantry. His brother, Abraham Quamine, with the 24th U.S. CT Infantry. And then I did learn later on they had a brother-in-law, Edward Ford, with the 25th U.S. CT Infantry.
The first day of this year's reenactment dawns gray and chilly, and the camp awakens slowly. Reenactors are sticklers for detail, sharing a cup of morning brew made right here in the field, practicing formations and skirmish lines. And even drawing soldiers' pay.
Hey, you've already been paid. Hip hip hooray! Hip hip hooray!
But what of the real men who fought and died here? Many of whom rest in unmarked graves, the U.S. colored troops. Who remembers them? The answer, of course, is Fred and other USCT reenactors. Later in the spring, they don their uniforms one more time for some long overdue formal recognition of soldiers who fought here in the Battle of Forks Road and were buried in Wilmington's National Cemetery.
And they really have not gotten the due recognition that they deserved, and Fred Johnson applied for, and a highway historical marker has been approved, and that will be erected sometime this spring. So Mr. Johnson is, again, as an African American, in the vanguard of our Civil War history.
It took many trips to Raleigh to meet with the State Archives and History Division, and long talks with the Wilmington National Cemetery. But he got it done. Just like Fred's great-great-grandfather, who walked from Florida to Pennsylvania after the war to return to his family, Fred persevered. And thanks largely to his efforts, a highway marker now informs the thousands of people who drive by this cemetery that brave men of all colors rest here.
Today's event centered around the many tombstones that are in the National Cemetery that have never been given any type of recognition. As the mayor stated today, thousands of people drive up and down Market Street. They never know. Why did it take so long? No one made any effort or had any interest to step up and start to do something. Well, I did. I'm very proud and happy that I did.
Podcasts on UNC-TV.org are made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV.